All right, today we're jumping into a global showdown that might just define the 21st century. And no, we're not talking about armies or economies. We're talking about something way more fundamental: minds. This is the high-stakes race in the classroom between the United States and China.
Yeah, that's a pretty intense statement, right? It's designed to be a wake-up call. Because this isn't just about who gets better grades. It's about two totally different philosophies on how you build the next generation of innovators and leaders.
But that really makes you wonder, what does winning even mean in education? Is it just about crushing the competition on international tests? Or is it about nurturing that spark of creativity, that innovation that you just can't measure on a standardized test? That's the huge question we're digging into today. Okay, so to really get a handle on the scoreboard, first we have to understand the rule books. And believe me, when it comes to the philosophy of education, the US and China are playing completely different games.
So in the US, the whole system is really built around the individual. It's all about encouraging kids to find their own path, to question things, even to fail and take risks. The end goal? To create unique, independent thinkers. Now, China, it's the total opposite. It's built on a foundation of collectivism. That means discipline, a deep respect for authority, and drilling down on the fundamentals until you've absolutely mastered them.
So, with those two very different approaches in mind, let's get to the juicy part. Let's look at the global scorecard. How do these systems actually stack up when they go head-to-head?
You know, the big one everyone talks about is the PISA test. PISA stands for the Program for International Student Assessment. Think of it like the Olympics for academics. And honestly, the results, they always tell a fascinating story.
And wow, the 2022 math results really say a lot. You can see right here, the US scored a 465. Now, that's not just lower than the top countries, it's actually below the average for developed nations, which is 472. The takeaway here is pretty stark. The US is falling behind its peers. And check this number out because it shows just how tough the competition really is. It's not just a two-horse race. A whopping 36 other countries scored higher than the US in math. We're talking places like Vietnam, Portugal, and Slovenia. That is a huge signal about where the global standard is right now.
So, you gotta ask, what's behind these scores? Well, one massive factor is just sheer academic intensity. Get this, Chinese students, on average, spend 55 hours a week on schoolwork. That's 11 hours more than the international average. I mean, that's a work week that would make a lot of professionals blush.
And here's another huge piece of the puzzle: teacher expertise. In the US, your typical elementary school teacher is a generalist. They're amazing, but they have to teach everything: reading, writing, science, and math. And what that means, as you can see here, is that only about 1 in 10 elementary teachers who teach math is actually certified in math.
Now flip that coin over and look at China. They've had specialized elementary teachers for decades. So from a really young age, kids are learning math from a math expert and science from a science expert. That builds a completely different kind of foundation right from the start.
But, and this is a huge but, for all that focus on drilling the fundamentals, this is where the whole story gets turned on its head. When it comes to college, to higher education, the US is still the undisputed king of the hill. The fact that hundreds of thousands of China's best and brightest students vote with their feet and come here to places like MIT, Stanford, and Harvard, well, that tells you pretty much everything you need to know.
So what this all shows is that neither system has it all figured out, not by a long shot. They both have some pretty clear strengths and some major blind spots. So let's break down the trade-offs that each country is making.
Okay, so here's the deal in a nutshell. The US system, it's incredible at producing creative innovators, but it really struggles with flat test scores and some serious inequality. China, on the other hand, churns out top-tier test takers with incredible discipline, but it comes at a cost: intense pressure and a potential gap in creativity. I mean, you just can't deny the primary strength of the American system. It nurtures the kind of out-of-the-box thinking that creates places like Silicon Valley. Our whole culture of debate, of questioning the textbook, of trying something new, it's genuinely world-class. But here's the tough pill to swallow. American performance in reading and math has basically been flat since the year 2000. We've thrown billions of federal dollars at it with huge programs like No Child Left Behind and Common Core, and the scores have barely budged.
Okay, now let's turn the spotlight on China's blind spot. You know those jaw-dropping PISA scores? Well, they come with a really big asterisk. China only tests students from its wealthiest, most privileged cities, like Beijing and Shanghai. It's their highlight reel, not the full game film. It's definitely not representative of the entire country.
And there's a very real human cost to all this pressure. The Gaokao, that's the National College Entrance Exam. It can literally decide a student's entire future in a single test, and it contributes to just staggering levels of stress. Almost a third of adolescents in China have been diagnosed with anxiety. The system is an absolute pressure cooker.
So where do we go from here? This isn't a static competition. Both countries are constantly changing and adapting. Let's take a look at what the experts think is coming down the pike for this educational race.
Looking ahead, experts see 4 big trends really shaping this whole thing. First, a widening gap in STEM fields, which could honestly be a national security risk for the US. Second, China's universities are rising fast, and they're starting to challenge America's long-standing dominance. Third, and this is maybe the most interesting part, we're seeing a convergence. Both systems are starting to borrow from each other. And finally, the big worry for the US is that our own internal inequality could become our biggest roadblock.
Yeah, this idea of convergence is really fascinating. You have Chinese schools trying to bring in more creativity, more project-based learning to break up that rigid curriculum, and at the exact same time, you have many educators in the US pushing for more structure, more discipline, and a return to the fundamentals. It kind of makes you think the future might not belong to one system, but maybe to some kind of hybrid of the two.
And really, that brings us to the bottom line. For the United States, winning isn't about trying to become China. It's about fixing our own house. It's about getting serious about training and paying our teachers, making math a real priority again, and finally tackling the huge inequalities that mean a kid's zip code can still determine their entire future.
So, as this whole race keeps evolving, it leaves us with this one, final, really fundamental question. In a world being reshaped by these 2 superpowers, what's the one skill the next generation absolutely cannot afford to lose? Is it the mastery of facts? Or is it the power of creative, independent thinking? The answer to that, well, that could define everything.